All right, guys, today what we're going to be working on is an oil leak. At least it looks like it's going to be an oil leak. We'll find out when we take this cover off. This is a 6.5 liter diesel engine, so that's what this video is going to be applicable to. And this is a 99 Suburban. And so what we can see on the front here is it's very wet with oil, right? If I touch this, my gloves are clean. We can see there's a lot of fresh oil sitting all under here. And no oil over here. So typically this is either a power steering fluid leak or an oil leak. We're going to have to open up this shield to tell for sure what we're looking at. There's a couple of 15 millimeters. We're just going to pull those and then this will fold back out of our way. All right, and then this will get our flashlight over here, and this will fold back, and let's see what we see. So, well, we definitely got an oil leak. So if we zoom in up here, we can see the oil is just dripping right off of one of these oil cooler lines, and it's been traveling over here for a while. This one's okay, but it doesn't matter because if you get a leak in one, you generally want to replace them in pairs, both the inlet and the outlet. So it looks like that's what we're going to be doing today. I don't see anything else. You know, there's a possibility there's two leaks going on, but we're going to focus on the one we can see for sure. So we're going to go about replacing these two oil cooler lines on this 6.5 liter diesel. So let me walk you through that today. All right, so to get this job done, we're going to start here in the front just to get you some orientation. So we're looking at the grill. This is the up-level grill. It's going to be the same if you got the down-level grill with the single headlight. And we come up here behind the grill. This is the oil cooler right here. This thing, it looks like a baby radiator sitting in here. And you're going to have to come down through the bumper nostril. And then what you'll see is here's the pipes for the oil cooler line here and here. And then right over this shield, hopefully you can see just the top of it, is one of the fasteners holding the bracket. So we're going to have to pull that 10 millimeter fastener. That'll release the bracket that's holding these two pipes. And then we're going to have to take the grill off in order to access the two fittings that the pipes fit into on the oil cooler. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the grill off. So we'll start with that. All right, we're going to start with the turn signal housings. They're held in by 4 Phillips screws. So we're going to remove these first. All right, and then this guy, we're just going to get him disconnected. The way this works is you're just going to give it a little squeeze and a twist. Take our bulb holders out, and then we'll set this aside where it's not going to get damaged. Going to go do the same thing on the passenger side, and then we'll continue. All right, so why did we take off these turn signal housings? Well, if I can get you in here, and it's really hard because I got a lot of glare to my right, and then it's a dark crevice in here, but you can see there's a little tab right here where my finger is, right? And then this grill snaps, this particular style grill snaps into the other side of that. So if I take a mirror here, you guys can see, hopefully, if we look in the mirror, and you zoom in, right? You can see how that fits in to that little tab. So that's why we had to do that. All right, next there's a series of 7 millimeter fasteners holding this style of grill. Just going to have the camera follow me along while I remove them. This one here, sometimes people forget about it and they break the grill by not removing it, right? So you want to make sure that you get that one. All right, so with these out of the way, we just have those bottom tabs I was telling you about. So we come back over here. we'll do this guy again that I was explaining to you. So I'm going to lift up on this tab that I showed you in the mirror last time. Hopefully I can get my finger on there. It's come on. There you go. Sorry. Okay, so we got a couple in the middle. We got the same kind of tab on this side. All right, and you definitely want to set the grill very carefully down. Now, on either end, we're going to have this little side marker lamp. So I'm going to get the one on the passenger side, then I'm going to set this aside and I'll show you the oil cooler. All right, guys, just to show you all the brackets that should be on the grill on this upper end trim level, there should be a bracket on top that was held on by one of those 7mm. This is the bracket that we were freeing up by the turn signal opening. This is one of the screw mounts. This is the center screw mount. This is another snap tab, screw mount, and then there's the last of the tabs that you come in from the turn signal. So if you're missing any of those, it's a pretty good idea to start looking for another grill at the salvage yard. All right, now with the grill out of the way, we got a better view of the oil cooler. We can come down here and see how these fittings work, right? So the lines, the intake and the outlet lines, have a 27mm fitting, and then this guy here is about a 32. So we're going to go ahead and loosen these up. I do not have a 32mm wrench, so I'm just going to be using an adjustable. It's not something that you come across needing all that often. Actually, I'm going to get this guy on first, and then we'll get this guy on. So the big one is just to hold the oil cooler steady so we don't crack or damage it trying to get the line loose. You can see it's not very securely fastened. There's just a couple of 10mm bolts. That's all it's holding it. And then this frame bracket down here has a couple of 10s also. So it's not that rigid. So you gotta secure this when you're trying to take it off. Find some leverage on it too. There we go. And you want to watch this harness that you don't damage it. All right, I'm just trying to get them loosened up before we pull that 10mm that I mentioned that holds that little bracket below that secures these behind the bumper nostril. Just want to make sure that I get this where we'll be able to finish it the rest of the way, just like I'm doing right now. All right, there's one. We're going to leave that one for a moment, and let's go get this guy over here. Same deal. It's a little bit more constrained because we've got this bumper trim piece in the way. Now, if you wanted to, you could optionally remove this. There's several more 7mm that you can go follow along here and take it off. I'm going to try to cut a corner and leave it on. Let's see how we do. This one's giving us a little bit of trouble. It's loosening, but probably has more corrosion than the other side. All right, I'm satisfied that's loose. All right, let's get the camera reoriented and let's go down and pull this 10mm retainer, and then we can go ahead and try to remove these. It's easier if you pull the bumper. I'm going to try to skip doing that today, and let's see how it goes. I think we can still wiggle this out without pulling the bumper. All right, to get the retaining bracket off, I'm going to take the ductwork here behind the bumper. I'm going to separate it like you see so that I can get this middle piece to move forward a little bit. I'm going to come in here with a 1/4 inch size ratchet with a 10mm socket on it. So I can give you guys some light from up above so you can see what I'm doing. This is one way you can do it. I'll show you the other way in a minute. I'm going to get onto this fastener and see if we can release it. There we go. And that's all you're really going to be able to fit in from this side, again, unless you want to pull the bumper. Now, what's another thing you could do? Well, another thing you could do, I'll show you that real briefly. You could come underneath with a ratcheting box end wrench like this. Let me see if I can get that view for you. Hopefully you can see in there where the wrench is on the fastener this way too. So there's two ways you could do it. You come underneath like I'm doing now, or you can come up above like I showed earlier. And it would help if I was loosening it instead of tightening it. Jeez. There we go. Now, sometimes cutting out steps can save you time, like not pulling the bumper off. Sometimes they can cost you time, but I think this time we'll end up ahead by skipping that step. There's definitely no room for any power tools, that's for sure. All right. You don't want to remove this fastener. We just wanted to loosen it up. I'm looking for another tool here that I did not have handy. I'm going to try to get up here and release this bracket. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I just gave a little push on this side. You guys able to see that in the camera? Let me see if I can come up above and change the view. All right, so what was I doing? Well, I'm behind this plate. That's why you can't see nothing. And I'm trying to figure out how can I give you guys a view of this. Right there. You see how I opened up this little retainer? Ah, gosh, let me see if I can get a flashlight from behind and come back to this. All right, so if I come in here with the remote camera, now you can see it, right? There's the fastener, and there's the bracket that I opened. You can see it's like a little clip. Here's the one that's still attached. Now, if I can get the camera here to hold this guy here, I'm going to reach my hand in here, and I'm just going to pull this other clip off. Like that. And that's what holds these pipes. Now, why did I loosen the fastener? Because we want some flex to this as we try to get it out. That's all. That's why I said don't take it off, just loosen it. All right, so before we pull these off the rest of the way, so this vehicle's been sitting overnight. That's a good way to let all the oil drain out, but there's always going to be a little bit residual. You do not need to drain oil out of the engine to do this repair. The only oil that's going to be there is whatever's left in the cooler and what's left in the lines. All right, so this one's almost enough to turn by hand. Still too much corrosion. They go in there quite a ways. There we go. All right, that one's out. Now this guy has got way more corrosion on him, so he's been kind of fighting us the whole way. You notice I'm keeping the cooler as secure as I can to prevent it getting damaged and twisted. We don't need to do these lines and find out that the cooler's leaking. There's so much corrosion on the fastener, you know, we can just barely get the wrench to fit it. There's definitely no chance of turning that by hand. Just in case. Minimize the mess where we can, if there is any. I tell you, she's fighting us right to the bitter end. Still can't turn it by hand. There we go. All right. No oil out of that one either. All right, great. So sitting overnight, other than that little splash up, I take that back. We do get a little bit of oil coming right out the back here. So get a couple more rags, and we do have a little bit trickling out this side as well now. All right, that's to be expected. We'll brake clean all that up. So I'm going to get a couple more rags. We'll let whatever's in here run out, get rid of that mess so that we can continue. All right, guys, I'm just going to work this pipe out of that bracket that I showed you in the clip earlier. You know, it's still sitting in the other half of that on both sides. And the main reason I'm doing that is as we try to pull it through, I don't want it to accidentally get hung up on anything and maybe break that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come from underneath. And I'll see if I can get a place to get you a view, but let me go underneath first and just see the orientation. I want to make sure they're free from the bracket completely. Okay, yep. All right, so now to get them out, we got to do a little bit more disassembly. Let me bring the camera down here, and I'll show you what I mean. All right, so we ended up putting a pan down here. There's not a lot of oil that's going to come out, just a few ounces. Depends on, you know, what's in there, more or less. All right, so we've got this shield I was mentioning. So how do we get it off to pull the pipe out? Well, there's a couple of 15s on a hinge holding it. So I got the electric ratchet on the one on this side. You're not going to be able to see it, but you can see the one at the other end right here, right? And so we're going to pull these two 15s with the special wavy washer on them off, and that's going to allow this shield to come down. Right, so it looks like that. It's a special shoulder bolt. So try to keep this the way you found it. Just like that, with the U facing up, not down, up. All right, now with this out of the way, we got a zip tie to cut for this remote PMD harness, but now we can pull these lines down. You can see, right, I'm already able to manipulate them. So I'm going to have to kind of watch what I do on the front, clip the zip tie. We're going to pull these down, and then we're going to work on the back. All right, got that zip tie clipped off, and now try to guide this guy down. All right, there's one. Whoops, more oil. All right, so just going to let that run out. I mean, it is an oil cooler line, guys, so there's going to be a little bit of mess like that. So if I can pull this down, the flex part, and get as much of this drained out as I can before I go tackle the next one. All right. Same thing with the other one. And again, because we loosened the bracket and we got them out of the bracket, they should just slot right down. Naturally, this one's hung up on something. There he is. All right, same deal. He's probably going to be dripping, so put my finger over it until I can get over the... All right, no, nothing out of that one. Okay. There's a little O-ring here that you want to make sure on both these hoses comes out when you take it from the cooler. There's an O-ring here, and there's an O-ring here. I'll give you another shot of that in case you can't see it, but no, I see it. It's on the camera. All right. All right, so now we're done on this end. Now let's go to the back. All right, so just another view from the top here, guys, on the oil cooler. You can see right down there that gray retaining clip. That's what I was referring to. So I reclosed those so they didn't get caught up on the pipe when we're pulling it down and break off, because we want to have that secure this thing. All right, you guys notice I put a little piece of blue tape on the pipe that connected to the driver's side of the cooler. I believe that this is the inlet. I just want to keep track of which one goes where as we go to the back. All right, guys, the next thing we got to do here in the front is these two lines are held in by a little plastic bracket. That guy right there. We got to reach in there and get them popped out. So I'm going to see if I can do this with the camera sitting right in front of my face for y'all. I may not be able to and may have to move it out of the way. All right, guys, I'm glad I got the camera out of the way and aborted what I was doing. Actually, you have to get a long-nosed pair of pliers, really long nose, and squeeze that little clip that you see right there in the center of the frame. And then when that's out of the way, right, this guy will come off. There's a good shot of it right there. So we didn't break it. I'll dig up the part number for it in case yours is missing or broken. Now we just need to pop it off the lines. I'll give us a little bit more wiggle room when we go to the back. All right, here's a shot of that little retaining clip. Right, you just want to make sure that this bottom piece doesn't get broken or it won't stay in the little metal bracket that it sits in. All right, before we go work on the back end of these lines, let's take a look at the service manual and go over some of the information that's in here. I'll tell you right now that the information is kind of dated in this, and I'll explain why in a minute. All right, so they talk about this, and by the way, they're also going to go over all the engines at once, so some of this doesn't apply to the diesel. So you can see they're going to spend a lot of time talking about these clips and having a pick to get a spring out of these clips. That it's like a quick connect, very similar to what you'd see on a transmission cooler line. I will show you this as we get under the truck, at least one. I won't show both, but I'll show removing one. So they're talking about removing the line from this fitting that's attached to the engine block and removing a little retainer clip to do that. All right, so this section is only for the V6, so we're going to skip that. This is only for the two V8 gas engines. This is for the big block gas engine. Here's the diesel for the 6.5. So here they're telling you that, if they're just describing how to remove everything. They're telling you that you're going to need to remove them from the oil cooler, which we've already done. They're going to tell you that you need to remove and discard the oil filter. Now that's, you see in the picture here, this is for a two-wheel drive vehicle where it's just the filter. They don't mention with a four-wheel drive vehicle like the one we're working on, we're actually going to drop the adapter for the oil filter, and I'll show that when we need to as well. You can do part of this without it, but you're going to have to drop that adapter at some point. They're just reminding you that to clean everything before you put it back on. The assumption here is that you're putting stuff back on. In our case, we're replacing it. They're telling you to check everything. As we get underneath, we're going to see that our fittings are corroded, so we're going to end up replacing those as well. So they're showing you in this picture two things. There's the fittings, the filter, there would be an adapter for four-wheel drive, and then there's a little plastic clip that holds on that I showed you earlier that holds the clips to these brackets, and the bracket's held with a bolt, right? So you guys already saw that. And then the service manual is just going to spend an inordinate amount of time on this spring clip going back into the fitting. So if you reuse the fittings, you must replace the clips. They say right here, right? Do not reuse the existing retaining clips, right? The reason is that they can get corroded. If they pop off, these lines will pop out while you're driving. You'll dump all the oil out of the engine and blow it. So you do not reuse these clips. You must put new ones in there. They talk about how you would set the indent on one side and slide it in. I'll show you this. Even if I end up putting new fittings on, I'll show you with the old ones how to do this. They're telling you don't just try to slide it on like that, because what will happen is you'll spread it out. You need to do this technique where you do one end in and then use your thumb to roll it around. Okay, they're telling you how to check to see that the little edges of the spring are sticking through, and what's going to happen as you push this in, it's going to push that little piece out, and then as it goes in the rest of the way, it's going to snap in behind the ridge and hold it. That's how this works. They show you some other pictures that aren't applicable to our model year. In our model year, there's no plastic cover for this. This is really only used on the transmission cooler fittings for our year, the years this video covers. So I skip all this. We're back to something for the V6. Small block gasoline V8s, big block gasoline V8s. Okay, last section for the diesel. So these fittings that go in the block have a torque of 18 foot-pounds. I'll have to double check when we get under there, but I believe that they are a 32 millimeter socket or wrench to get them off, but we'll see when we get under there. And then they're telling you for this little bracket and that clip, they're telling you the bolt that holds it on the block. The picture's kind of right, but they give you two torque values. And the reason for this is prior to 97, there was an additional clamp kind of like right about here that was held on with a bolt. And it's not in the picture because it's not used in 98, which is what the services manual's for, but this write-up wasn't updated. So you really only have the one here. And the one here, I would use the 80 inch-pounds for the bracket bolt. All right, that is it. Let's go ahead and go underneath and see what we got. Alright guys, we're right by the driver's side exhaust manifold. There's the adapter for the oil filter, and then right above it is the end of these two oil cooler lines. You can see this one clearer, but the other one's right there in the shadows. And right in the middle between that rusty spot and that groove is a clip that we're going to have to get out in order to free it. So I'm going to get the camera set up where you guys can watch how to remove that clip. Alright guys, so now I'm going to come up here with a pick. And I'm going to try to grab onto this little clip and pry it out. Just trying to find the best way to grab onto it. I'm trying to get it onto the thicker end of the pick. Alright, there we go. Switch to something else. I'm going to come up here with a little hook. Pull this the rest of the way off. Come on. There we go. Alright. So it looks like this, right? Get some rags ready. I'm going to come up here with a small pry bar. I'm going to get up against the block. See if this is, I might need to get a longer pry bar. We'll see how this one goes. Nope, don't have any leverage there. Let's see about here. Yep, okay. See if we can coax them out from here. There we go. All right. Now it's, here comes the oil. We'll go ahead and let that soak up into the rag before we go any further. All right, this is unfortunately going to create more of a mess, so get your oil drain pan ready. I'm going to come up here with a 36 millimeter, and we're going to see if we can free this guy up. Now, we recently fixed a leak on this guy. I'll link that video up in the upper right, because when you pull this off, it's a good time to check the seals on this oil filter adapter. And you're only going to run into this problem if you've got four-wheel drive. Ratchets get all slippery with the oil. This is a long bolt too. Clean up this ratchet here for a second. Get some rags, get this off my hands. And we're just going to let this drip here for a bit. Formula here, I did go ahead and drop that oil pan adapter the rest of the way. I didn't remove it. And I went ahead and removed the retaining clip from the other cooler line. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get that other cooler line disconnected now. Just looking for the right shape and angle on a tool to do that. Alright guys, there's just no leverage up here. So I'm going to try to just get something in that I can pry between the line and the fitting. Trying to get some progress that way. Even that's probably going to be difficult. I think what we're going to end up having to do is kind of tappy-tap this flat-bladed screwdriver in like a wedge and try to get that seal to let go. Let's see if that's better focus for you. Definitely have some eye protection on for something like this. Given how old and corroded these fittings are, I was planning on replacing them anyway, so I'm not too concerned about having to resort to this technique. Alright, finally getting some progress. Alright, maybe now if we were the regular pry tool and come off the rest of the way, can we? Nope. There she goes, finally. Alright. It's increasingly looking like the only way to get these lines off on a four-wheel drive vehicle is to take off the exhaust manifold, which is really not what I wanted to do. It was not on the bingo card today. Yep, no, there is just no clearance. This exhaust manifold is in the way now. So, you know, the oil filter adapter was in the way in this direction, but now we can't pull anything out because the exhaust manifold's in the way. Ah, what a pisser. Such a simple repair turns into a huge production just for lack of a few extra millimeters by the engineering team. All right, guys, we're going to go back to this section. I'm positive that it didn't mention anything in here. We're just going to take a quick, slower gander here about having to remove the exhaust manifold. And as I suspected, I didn't miss anything. There's nothing in here about having to remove the exhaust manifold from the removal section. So the instructions are written for before 1997. In 97, the size of the oil cooler lines changed. I think they're like a ½ inch now. They don't have the tails on the end of the connector to the fitting, for example. I'll show you what I'm talking about with that in a minute. This means we're going to have to loosen. We don't have to remove it. We're going to have to loosen the exhaust manifold, and we're going to have to pull the crossover to get enough clearance to get these two old lines off and extract the old fittings. All right, I think all the oil has drained out, so we can get this oil filter housing out of here. I've turned it upside down to help with the draining, and now I'm just going to bring it past the drive shaft, wiggle it around and out and under and away from the vehicle so we get some more room here. This will also allow me to move the camera over where you guys can see a little better as well. Just get the last of these drips up so they don't get on the camera, and let me go reposition the camera. All right, with that out of there and no more oil dripping, I can get you guys a better view. So let's see what this manifold obstruction is, right? So hopefully zoomed in like that. Both of these lines are hitting the exhaust manifold, and they can't be removed. So that's why we've got this problem. It's about, I mean, I'm sure with the older models that had the smaller size cooling lines, this wasn't really an issue. But with these larger lines, we can't get enough clearance to extract them. I would say we're like 1/8 of an inch short on the upper fitting, but we're more like 1/4 of an inch short on the lower fitting. So that's why the exhaust manifold's got to come off. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start soaking these threads on this exhaust manifold. They've never been removed as far as the owner can recall since 1999, so that's not a good sign. And they're going to be very corroded. That's why I really don't like having to do this, but it is what it is. There are 8 bolts. There are 2 on the top left that are shorter than all the others. If we zoom in here, you can see the condition of the exposed thread. This is usually the part that gets compromised because it's exposed to the heat and the elements. You can see there's some type of frayed material on there. I'm hoping it's just part of the casting, but it might actually be part of the threads coming off, but we'll find out. And then over here to the right there, we can see the exposed threads of one of the longer bolts. This one doesn't look too bad. Anyway, we're just going to soak them down because on this particular model engine, they're less likely to break off in the cylinder head. They're more likely to break off in the manifold. Still a PETA, because we didn't want to take this manifold off. We just want to loosen it. We need just like, 1/8 of an inch to get one of those lines off, maybe a quarter tops for the bottom one. The upper line is the inlet and the lower line is the outlet. All right, so I'm just going to get started on doing that, and then while that's soaking in, we'll go ahead and pull the crossover off. All right, we're in the driver's side front wheel well with the trim tool. We're going to move these fir tree push pin clips, take this upper A-arm dust shield out of the fender inner liner. Just try to get this out carefully so we don't bust it. If you're missing these clips or you have any that break, I'll put a link in the description of the part number. Now, why are we doing this? Well, this should give us better access to these exhaust manifold bolts, right? So we'll be able to get down and spray with PB the ones we couldn't get, right? So you can see they're in pairs, right? So 2, 4, 6, and then you can't see it off to the side, 8. 8 bolts. We're not going to remove them all. We're just going to loosen them up. If we're in here doing this, I'm going to replace them, but we'll replace them after we get these lines in. All right, guys, my go-to chemical or tool for these rusty bolts is going to be this AC Delco Rust Penetrant. It's an AC Delco 10-40-20 and a GM 88-86-26-28. Like all the other parts and tools, I'll put a link down in the video description, but I've had good luck with this, and so we'll give this a shot for this problem and loosening up these rusty bolts. All right, to get the exhaust manifold loosened up, we're first going to have to remove the exhaust pipe, the crossover pipe here. It's held on by 3 13mm on the outside here, newer bolts, as you can see. These are going to be fairly easy to get off. We just replaced a rear main seal for this owner's truck maybe 2 years ago, so these aren't even rusty yet. So there's really not much to show here other than pulling these off. So to give you the benefit of the difficulty this job is likely going to be, I will insert a clip of what it was like to remove the originals from this a couple of years back on one of these other videos. Take the 3 off in each side, which I'm about to do right now, and then we can remove the pipe. There we go. Take it easy. Yeah, so this is just going to be bouncing the camera all over the place. So I'm not going to be able to film this, guys, because I got to get right down here and remove these bolts. All right, guys, on the passenger side here, just showing you the orientation of my bolt buster. Same deal, tire off the wheel, dust shield off so you can get access. There's a lot less room on this side, and if the gods are not with you, this is the one where you're going to have trouble because you got almost zero access. But fortunately for us, we didn't have any trouble. I allocated about 2 hours to this job, and we used about all of it, but we have no broken bolts. Yay! So you can see here the technique I used with the bolt buster by putting the coils right around the triangle of the upper threaded flange that's on the exhaust manifold. So this is the only one that's really visible on this side. You heat this guy up, and then you come in from underneath, and work it off. Now, I use that AC Delco exhaust lubricant liberally, and I'm a fan of that. I let it soak for 45 minutes, and then we'd go hit it with a breaker bar, and then we'd heat it again, and we'd hit it, and then we'd heat it again, and we'd hit it, and finally, each of these gave out. So let's take a look at those bolts. All right, guys, so these are the bolts that we pulled off the driver's side. And if we zoom in here, you can see the risk of failure. It's very obvious, right? So this is why we took so much time. This was ready to break. It would have broke right there. But by being patient and a lot of heat, you can see the threads inside the flange were fine. So we just had to break this rust torque torque caused by the corrosion here and here, and then we were able to get these threads to come out, right? The flange attaching the crossover is not threaded, just the flange on the exhaust manifold. Here's another view. This one here, even worse, right? Super lucked out that this did not snap. Now remember the technique here with this kind of situation, right? Once you get it out, what I try to do is I try to do with the ratchet, 1, 2, 3, back, 1, 2, 3, back. If you get any resistance at all, tighten it all the way back in and start over again. That's part of why you budget so much time. And some of you are watching this saying, oh, geez, just throw an impact wrench on there. No, you don't. Because if you do, they're going to snap off, and a 2-hour job is going to become a 12 or 48-hour job, right? So that's why you spend the time. Now, the third one on the driver's side wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad at all. So, and then the 3 that we took off the passenger side, they're actually in fairly decent shape. Anyway, we're going to toss all 6 of these and replace them with brand new GM bolts. Let's go ahead and get underneath and continue. All right, guys, with the pipe out, you should be left like this. You probably will have this little exhaust manifold gasket still stuck in there on the driver's side, and similarly on the passenger side. All right, guys, it's time to get this manifold. So I'm going to show you a couple of these. I'm not going to show them all. We actually have had this soaking for 3 days or so now, because we had to wait for parts, which are going to be these new bolts. So I'm going to first come in here with a 15 millimeter on a breaker bar manually, see if I can get this to loosen up. Either this one, or this one on the lower 3. Just whichever one I can grab, we'll film. I'm not going to be able to film them all because some of these I'm going to have to get up on top to get them. Problem I've got now is I'm just trying to get it seated on the head of the bolt from this awkward position down here. Here we go. All right, let's see if this guy will let go. Now, I always try to get the initial release done with manual tools, just in case, like you saw on those crossover bolts, if the necks are all rusty, it's less likely to break off than if you used a power tool. All right, let's see if we can loosen the one next to it now. Okay. All right. Let's see if we can scoot them a little bit further out. All right, guys, I'm just going to come in here with a 1/2-inch ratchet now instead of that breaker bar. And we're going to work this guy off 1/4 of an inch. I don't know if you can see the gap from up on top, but I'll come down here and show you. All right, there's that one. Let's see if we can do the same thing with the first one we started with. Whoops. All right, that's 2 out of 8. We're 1/4 of the way done. So I'm going to keep doing that on all of those. Now you might say, why don't you use an impact wrench? Well, again, I'm worried about these breaking off. Once they're loose, we could come in with a little stubby like this Milwaukee. So I'm just showing you, I do have this tool. I just prefer not to use this kind of a tool for something like this. These exhaust manifold bolts have probably not been removed for a couple of decades. The owner last had these lines replaced by a Chevrolet dealer. I think they have the receipt they showed me from think it was 2005 or 2006, so 19 or 20 years ago. So I'm not keen to use any power tools for this job. So I'm going to keep taking the rest of them off just like these two. There's nothing to see. We'll come back when we get them off. All right, as you come to get these two on the top towards the front of the vehicle, you're going to want to pull the glow plug harness connectors. And then the easiest tool I found is to come in here with a flat flex head ratcheting wrench, 15 millimeter again, and that'll give you enough clearance to work this out without having to do a lot of disassembly, right? We don't want to take a bunch of stuff apart just to do this. So that should get you these ones in these two short ones that are here in the very front and then the one right behind it. All right, that's number 7 of 8, guys. One more to go. All right, guys, finally, we've got enough play on this exhaust manifold where I think we should be able to get these guys out finally. Okay, yep, there we go. There we go. All right, now I'm going to have a helper pull these lines out one at a time. All right, go ahead and pull the inlet out. You're going to have to twist it to get it to clear the motor mount. Sorry about that, guys. The flashlight was not happy. All right, as soon as the helper finishes pulling out the lines, you can go ahead and pull the outlet out a little bit too. Might help you clear what you're hung up on. Yep, just twist it. Yep, just like that. Like a clock. That's what you have to do to get it around the engine motor mount. All right, twist it again and pull it. Twist it one more time and pull it. All the way. You got to twist it all the way around. Twist it again and then pull. Yep, it just cleared that piece. It's on that bracket. It's past the front drive axle. All right, guys, momentarily intermission. I'm going to have to go in here and help pull this out. All right, to get the inlet out, we had to remove this bracket. This is the bracket that was holding this retainer, right? That we stuck our long nose pliers behind to get this off at the beginning. It's a 13 millimeter here that attaches it to the frame. With this removed, you can see where it was kind of scraping on there. We're trying to get that out. We can remove the inlet. However, the outlet is another problem. It looks like it's hitting the motor mount. I am not going to lift this engine to remove this other pipe. There's got to be another way, so let's go back in the back and see if we can find another way. All right, guys, this job is the gift that keeps on giving. So we removed the inlet line out just by taking that retaining bracket, but we can't get the outlet out from the front because it's hitting the four-wheel drive axle assembly and the oil pan. So the easiest way is to pull it through the back, I think, but that's going to necessitate pulling this four-wheel drive shaft, unfortunately. If you ever wonder why these old trucks end up in the salvage yard, the scrap yard, this is why. These kind of repairs are just exceedingly expensive labor-wise. You're going to need an 11 millimeter to get this guy loosened up. I like to put a little paint dot on one side. The service manual actually tells you to do that when you take this off. And the reason they tell you to do that is after a while, If you mix them up, you can get not vibrations, but noises. It's not a balance problem. It's just old metal has taken a certain shape kind of problem. All right. I was hoping we wouldn't have to do this. It's almost at the point where the manual should just say, remove engine, right? All right, we'll do the same thing on this side. And then we'll come back when we're ready to try and remove this guy. All right, we finally got these lines out. I will show you routing this outlet line back in the way I did it. As you saw, all I did was pull that four-wheel drive shaft out of the way. That allowed us to get it back enough to snake it back out the front in between the oil pan and the front axle. We're going to be replacing these with a GM 1510 4800, which will be the replacement inlet line. I've already got some plastic over the end for when we route this in, and then we'll be replacing the outlet line with a 1510 4803. That'll complete this job. So I was trying to show you earlier is the size of this pipe for these 97 and ups is much larger than the 96 and earlier. And that's why we have to loosen up the exhaust manifold to clear this. Fortunately, on these model engines, there is no exhaust manifold gasket. So all we have to do is reinstall these lines after we replace the fittings. I'll show you that in a minute. And then we're going to replace those exhaust manifold bolts. All right, to get these fittings off, you're going to need a 32 millimeter. It's going to be difficult to get a socket in here with the camera, so I'm going to start with just a wrench. See which one of these I can most easily get off. Might block your view here for a moment. Oops, sorry about that, guys. They're only 18 foot-pounds, so should not be difficult to get them going. Have your rags ready though, because you could end up with oil spillage when you start taking these off. Now you can see there's not a lot of room even for a wrench to turn. See if I can get the light a little better. It's not so glary. Still not enough we can turn it by hand. You guys get the point, or the picture though, right? You're just going to work these two fittings off if you're replacing them. Like I said earlier, you should replace them if they're not OEM or if they've already been used twice. That's just my rule. You might have a different rule. But when I get them off, I'll show you inside is where the seal is. And if you are reusing them, you can leave them on here, and I'll show you how to replace just the retainer clip. If you do reuse it, you've got to replace the retainer clip. You don't want to have that get all corroded and let go and then have the pipe come off when you're cruising down the highway. Alright, this outlet fitting I think is at a point where we can turn it by hand. Maybe? Nah, still not. I'm sorry for the bounciness, guys. I got the camera sitting on a little extension, and there's no way I can get it where you can see with me not also hitting it. Alright, so there's one. Now we're going to go get the other one. We'll do that off camera, and I'll come back and show you how these clips can go in. All right, our new fittings are going to be a GM 1502 7502. We've got a pair of them, and we open one of these up. These will get installed with the same 32 millimeter socket that we took the old ones off with, and they'll be torqued down to 18 foot-pounds. You can see on these, the spring is an orange color versus the service ones that I showed you earlier are blue. This plug they stick in there, if you turn it, you can see how it raises up the spring. Right, you can get the spring into a raised position, and then you can wiggle this guy out. So if I can do it here on camera, it probably won't let me get it on camera. Let's see. There. All right, and then you'll have these 3 nubs when you push the pipe in, just like this. So we'll get this where it's going to fit in there, and that's exactly how the pipe's going to go in. All right, so let me get these installed and torqued down, and then we can run those new lines in and connect them. All right, guys, so here's those 2 fittings that we're replacing, and I'm going to tell you why are we replacing them, right, and with the clips as well. So if you look down inside here, either one, there's a seal in here. Right there. And there's one right here as well. And after a while, that seal gives out. And GM doesn't replace just this seal. They want you to replace this whole fitting. Now these little retaining clips that go in here, they can get sprung out. And the new ones would be a part number 8896 0976. And these service ones have a blue coating. The ones that come with the new fitting have kind of like a reddish-orange coating, which you can see if we kind of move this guy onto the white and we put the one we took off. We can see we've deformed this by removing it. We just can't reuse it anymore because it doesn't have the right tension. Now, I'll show you how you would have put one of these new ones on if you were keeping it like it showed in the service manual. You've got these slots, 3 sides, and that's going to correspond to here, here, and here. Pick any one to start with, get that guy in. Don't let the other one go in like I just did. You want to get it, it's got a little catch to it. You definitely don't want to just force it in because it'll stretch the new one. So you just want to get it to where it's right on the edge and it just rolls on with your thumb. Just like that. Now this one's deformed so it doesn't stick in all the way. This is why you don't want to reuse it. But normally on a new one, you'll see 1, 2, 3 of these sticking out to hold the new pipe. Let's do that again. So I'm going to take this one, get it on the edge. Just push it on here. So it's on there, it's on there, and it's on there. Now again, when you put the new one on, if you don't stretch it, and that's how you'll know you haven't stretched it, you'll see all 3 of these, just like I showed you with the red one on the new fitting earlier. But this is just for demonstration. We're not going to reuse this. This is going to go into the steel recycling bin. All right, guys, the way I'm choosing to torque those 2 fittings is I'm taking this 32 millimeter box end wrench and I'm using this torque wrench adapter. And this is going to allow me to get up there and torque those 2 to the 18 foot-pounds specified. Obviously, we're only going to use the torque wrench. We're not going to use any force on the box end wrench. This adapter requires us to recalculate the value that we set the wrench to because we've extended the point of rotation from here out to here. I'll link a video up in the upper right of this I've done in the past on the math behind that calculation so that you get the right torque setting on the wrench. All right, guys, what we ended up doing with this, I'm going to show you the reverse of taking it out. So I've got the outlet line. I've got a piece of plastic on it to help keep debris from getting inside. This is the end that goes on the cooler. And we're going to end up routing it up over the axle. I'm probably not going to be able to get all of this on the camera. We're going to route it in the front. I'm going currently above the steering linkage. And now I'm going to take the hose. I'm going to get this to a point where we can get it to go over to the driver's side along this narrow gap with the oil pan like that. All right, at this point we've got it on this side. Now I'm just trying to route it a little bit more to the front. This is such a pisser, guys, but this is how you have to do it. All right, at this point, let's see, I got it hung up on the front here. Just hold on a sec. All right, there we go. So this guy I've got routed near the front. Now I'm going to have to go up in the front and get it where it's going to go through the bumper area, and then we can come back and get it onto the fitting. All right, guys, for the inlet, we're going to run it from the front just the way we took it out. We're going to kind of twist it to get in between the space of the oil pan and the axle, just like I mentioned earlier, until I can see it's back near the fitting. All right. So now we're at a point where we can connect it to the fitting on both of these. All right, so we've gotten these up enough. It's time to put them in. So I'm going to take their protective coating off that I added. And I just noticed, this is the thing you want to watch. When I took this off, it pulled our O-ring off. So we want to put that guy back. Right there. Get him untwisted. So he's happy. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm down here off camera. I'm just getting a little bit of 15W40 motor oil, and I'm putting it all around this ring to help protect it. Now we haven't put that little gray bracket on yet because I want to get this started first. Yeah, this O-ring is really not wanting to stay put. But he's very important to prevent leaks. See if I can get under here and grab this pipe. Now we're going to work it up inside the cooler, just like that. I'm going to start these threads by hand. Now this cooler shouldn't be moving around like you see it moving around. I think it's missing a fastener on the bottom. I noticed that when we took it off. Took these pipes off to begin with. Should we get these started? Before we torque it up, we'll go underneath and try to see what's going on with that. All right, let's take our 27. Just going to kind of hold the cooler a little bit with my hand since I know it's missing a fastener on this lower bracket down here, right? So it shouldn't be wobbling like this. And we'll torque this also to 18 foot-pounds using the same tool and technique I showed you that I used for the fitting, so that we can get in something like this. You could also do it with a crow's foot type if you had one that was 27 millimeters. When we do the torque, we'll want to have the 32 millimeter wrench right on this upper fitting here to keep any twisting from happening. And again, that's just to prevent leaks. All right, I just want to snug it up for now. All right, and then we're going to come over here and we're going to attempt to do the same thing over here. We have not connected these at the engine block fitting yet. Where did he go? He fell back down. All right, same deal. Take our little protective bag off. I think that was just the rubber band. Yep, there's our O-ring on this pipe. Looks like it's black. They can be different colors. Black or orange. Whatever the factory chose at that time to install. Doesn't matter. All right, same deal with the oil. Okay. Pushing them up in there. Starting this 27 millimeter fitting by hand while pushing the pipe up inside. All right. This is why we do it by hand and not cross-thread it, because there he goes. All right. What did we do with our 27? Here he is. Remember, we're not putting any force on this cooler. We're not trying to torque this guy. We're just trying to run him up, take the slack out. Nice and slow so the O-ring seats without getting torn. All right, there it's snug. All right, so the next thing we got to do, and I'm not going to necessarily film this, right? We got to get these two pipes back into that gray bracket. I think you can see it best from this side. You got to get both these back into this gray bracket down here, get him tightened back down and torqued into position, and then we'll go back in the back and seat them in the engine block fittings. All right, guys, we found that the reason our cooler was all loose and running around is because the two fasteners at the bottom of the bracket were gone. So the replacement for any of these oil cooler bracket screws that you see would be a 1233 7828. This is a part that's actually still available from GM. I'll put a link down in the description. All right, guys, we're back here. Taking our covers off of this end of the pipes. There's one. There's two. And then we're going to get the oil, and we're going to put the oil in the fitting end on the end of the pipes. All right. So we're just going to oily rag on the ends. I'm going to bump you guys a little bit. It's very cramped quarters here. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get on camera. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get some oil on my finger clean finger, it's going to go inside the fitting around that seal. I'll see if we can get that in this view. Okay, get this one. Can't get the other one. So let me get the other one and then we'll come back. All right, guys, let's go ahead and plug these in. See if I can do this without bumping you guys too much. All right, so our inlet line is going to be the one with the shorter curve. I don't know if we're going to be able to get this in by hand or not. Might need a pry bar. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to need a pry bar. Making sure this is going to fit. Alright, see, this one's bound up on something. Up ahead. I have to go see what it's bound up on first before I even push the other one in, just so we don't have any problems. All right, this job is just fighting us every inch of the way, but I think we've got everybody happy so that we can take a pry bar and fit these guys in. I'm going to do this outlet first just because he's right here. Ah, come on. Of course, the camera. You guys are right in the way here. I'll see if I can get this. Nope. Can't get leverage on the exhaust manifold because we got it all loose. All right, guys, we're going to have to tighten up this exhaust manifold to get enough leverage to push these new pipes into the new fittings. These are just a couple of the old bolts that came out. They're actually not as bad as I thought they would be in terms of no loss of material underneath, but I'm sure not going to reuse them. I'm just going to show you what we're replacing them with. The long ones I'm going to be replacing with 1402 8922. We're going to need 6 of those, and that's what we have. And then there's 2 that are shorter in length, right, near the upper part of the engine and the forward area. And those shorter ones are 1402 8923, and we're going to end up using 2 of these. So we're just going to go through, replace these. I'm not going to film this. There's nothing to see. And we're going to torque them to 26 foot-pounds. All right, guys, I'm sorry I couldn't get you in here for the click. But you can see what you're looking for here, right? So these guys should be flush. These pipes should be flush up against these fittings with no gap. You should see that the nubs that are visible, and you can get a mirror to see the ones on the other side, are sitting into the groove that's cut into the pipe. So at this point, we can start reassembling all the stuff we took apart to get down here. All right, there's our bracket in the 10 that's holding it. I ended up just pulling out the insert here. This yellow stuff is pollen is everywhere outside in the parking lot and the driveway and everything. But that's how that guy should be. There's no specific torque value on this particular fastener, so just snug it up and then reinstall what you took off. Take our little critter blocker rag out, and we want to get this donut off of this exhaust manifold stud out. And I doubt she's going to come out easily, so we're going to go the deform route. Try to take a punch and see if we can deform this guy and drop it out. Now what's going to happen is what just happened there. This piece is going to break off of the steel frame for the thing. It's going to leave that rusty steel frame inside there. So we're going to have to continue to go down the deform route to get it out. And just get it dented a little bit. It's usually enough to get it out. Let's see if that's enough. There we go. All right. So that's out, and what we're going to do, we'll do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll wire wheel on the inside of this thing, get all this debris out, and then we'll wire wheel on the outside. Make sure you wear a dust mask when you do this, because the fibers that can pose this, I don't think they still used asbestos back then, but you don't want to breathe it in anyway. All right, guys, we're going to be replacing that exhaust donut on this 6.5 liter diesel with a part 88891734. This box here has 5 of them in it, but we're going to be using 2, right? So that's exactly the piece that we took off that we're going to be remounting. All right, so after you get all this wire wheeled out, we're going to come up here and get a little bit of oil on our finger. Try to get a little bit of oil. We're going to just run a little bit on the inside edge of this steel ring here that this is attached to, just to ease with assembly here. And then we're going to use a rubber mallet. You could also use a block of wood. You just don't want to use anything that's going to be harder than that to get this guy seated. As soon as he looks like he's flush all the way around, it doesn't have to be perfect, because as we bolt in the flange, it'll pull it the rest of the way, but that's good. And it should stay up there on its own. I'm going to go do the passenger side, and we'll go on to the next step. All right, so for reinstalling our crossover, we're going to put in new bolts, 2450, 4922. We're going to use 6. And this is again for the diesel. Your gasoline engine may vary. The original hex head bolts were discontinued a long time ago, and this is what GM replaced them with on the diesels. These 13 millimeters. They also have a external Torx type, or regular Torx bit you can use too, but I would recommend you just use the 13s. So get these out, get it positioned in, and then we'll go over the torque value. All right, guys, we've got the exhaust crossover pipe reinstalled, as you can see, with the new bolts. Driver's side and passenger side are very similar, but if you take note of how the pipe's installed here, it is in the correct orientation. You can get it backwards, and so it's important not to do that. The torque value is no more than 26 foot-pounds, and you might not go that high. You just want to go high enough to compress the new exhaust donuts. So in this case, I actually probably ended up around 24 foot-pounds. All right, guys, this is just a view of that tool in action. So you can see I'm holding the torque wrench. It's got a detent right now because we're at the 18 foot-pounds. With this particular setup I have, we actually set it for 12 foot-pounds because of the extension. That's going to give us 18. All right, guys, now this clip that holds the pipes on this bracket, so you can see where my finger is on the left side is where this bracket, excuse me, this clip pushes through the bracket, and its little ears hold on to it, and it snaps onto both pipes. And then right above that is a 13 millimeter bolt that we had to remove to extract the inlet pipe. That guy gets torqued down to 80 inch-pounds like we saw in the service manual. All right, guys, if the bracket or clip is broken on yours, the replacement from GM would be a 1573 1996. This is a discontinued item, but you can still find them. I'll put a link in the description. All right, guys, it's time to put the oil filter assembly back on. Remember, I noted before that you're going to want to make sure you keep this seal lubricated and replace it if it's old. And I linked a video up in the upper right on all of the seals that are down on the center of this mounting stud, or excuse me, bolt. This filter only has 300 miles on it, so we're reusing it. Normally you'd coincide this particular job with an oil filter change, but we're going to reuse this since there's only 300 miles on it. I took this off with a 12.36 millimeter, but a 6.35 is a nicer fit, so I'm going to put it back on with that. And this center bolt's going to get torqued to 47 foot-pounds. All right, guys, taking a look at the service manual again, we can see the torque on the filter adapter bolt for the oil filter is 47 foot-pounds when we get ready to put that back in. And then another torque value would be on the bolts for the exhaust manifold. So you got 6 long ones, and then these 2 here are drawn correctly as shorties. 26 foot-pounds. There is no exhaust manifold gasket used on these years for this model engine. And then the next thing I'll show you is for the exhaust crossover. All right, so diesel engines. So let's see here, crossover pipe replacement. So you're gonna have to throw those bolts away. So on the exhaust manifold, you can reuse them if they're in good shape. Given the age of these, we're going to replace them. But on these bolts, you must remove them because they're always going to be damaged, and the threads have a sealant on them that keeps them from getting stuck in the exhaust manifold when they're new. If you look in the package, you'll see that. They say 25 foot-pounds. I've seen sometimes you might have to go 26 just to get the new seal to seat properly, but you're going to have to replace both donut seals and all 6 bolts. All right, guys, this front shield, these hinge 15s here, on both that end and this guy over here, they're 25 foot-pounds. Technically, it's 25 foot-pounds on the ones that attach it to the actual frame cross member, but this old plastic, I'd tell you just go snug on those, just to not have the plastic crack on. All right, guys, we're all buttoned up under here. I just wanted to give you the torque value over here with this guy here, these 4 11 millimeters that are holding this propeller shaft for the front drive axle back on. They're 15 foot-pounds each. And then that shield that we took off underneath this guy, which I think I can give you a view right here, right, this shield here, all 4 of these 15s, both these 2 here and the 2 on the other side, they go back on at 25 foot-pounds. All right, guys, we're all wrapped up. Did a test start of the engine, checked for leaks, both the cooler end and at the engine end, and we're good. This was a PETA of a job, but we're all done. We've got the grill back on. I would tell you on these fasteners, just snug them up. The plastic's too old and tired to be using the torque value without running the risk of something cracking. If you got questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below and I'll try to help. If you found this video useful and teach you a way to get this done yourself, keep the vehicle back on the road, I'd appreciate you paying it forward by hitting that like button. And as always, thanks for watching.